Clinton, Monroe, Randolph, and Washington counties. We're right across the river geographically from St. Louis. So once you cross the Car-Eaton Sharkfield River from St. Louis over into Illinois, we're the 5 counties that go just a little south of the bridge itself, the 4 bridges. And so I oversee 6 workforce development offices and 20 employees. And as with most local workforce investment boards, we work primarily with Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act individuals, barrier populations. So we're looking at migrant workers, veterans, individuals with differing abilities. I don't like to say disabilities because everybody has an ability. We work with single parents, justice involved, low income, low literacy, and we do our best to try to find out what that career pathway is. We don't do jobs. We look at career pathways. We do lots of assessments, and we talk to individuals, and we try to see where we can fit somebody in so that they're passionate about what they do every day. I don't think it does anybody any service to get them an entry-level job and let them work 3 jobs to try to put diapers on a butt or formula in a bottle. So everything we do is with long-term career pathways to where they maybe start as a CNA, but then they can go into LPN, RN, whatever it is they're interested in. We try to keep them motivated along the way with support services. So primarily what I'm going to cover today is I'm going to go through and talk about the different title partners and what their functions are. That's something that you can pretty much read in a book or in a flyer or online at your own research. Not going to spend a lot of time with that. What I'm going to do is tie that to what we do in our area. We're pretty successful with how we've strategized work-based learning principles. And so I'm going to tell you how we do it, how we started doing it, and what it took to do it. So hopefully that's the value add. And ask questions at any time. There will be plenty of time left for questions. But the 2 biggest frictions in the workplace are first the worker. How will they finance their education and training? And is employment a sure thing once they go through a certificate or an education program or they earn a bachelor's degree? There's no guarantee they're going to get a job. That's where work-based learning comes into play. There's 2 test drives that go on. The second being the employer. There's a high candidate failure because of lack of necessary skills, because they may learn in an education or training offering a set of theory or skills, but it might not be the ones that apply to the employer. So where work-based learning takes that out is that the employer is the center of the education and the training. The employee is the center of the education and the training. You're putting the 2 in the same space, the outcome improves. So paid work experience and registered apprenticeships have been key for us. They've really helped our employer in our region. And when you're able to actually talk to an employer and work with the employer, get them to the table, find out what their need is, and then give them a successful return on investment, your credibility goes up, and your ability to work with others in the region goes up because they do talk to each other. Pre-apprenticeship and internships are usually unpaid in our area. So what we do is we don't really do pre-apprenticeships and internships through our agency because we don't believe that anybody should do a job and not get paid. When I took over as director, one of the first things I did is we had a program where we would work with District 201's Bridges program, which are individuals that are in STEP programs. They're learning how to be self-sufficient as a differing ability individual. And they were going out and doing all this free work for employers. Why? I mean, in real life, don't you want them to get paid for their work? So I cut that out right away. We don't ever do that. So when an employer calls me and says, I want some kids to come do it, no. I'll do a paid work experience for you. I'll pay them to come work for you. But I'm not going to ever have them under my watch working for no pay. So 2 types of internships are paid, unpaid. Like I say, our area doesn't do unpaid internships. We do a paid work experience, and I'll kind of go into a little more detail when we get there. As a part of our WIOA operations, we deal with in-school youth, and we use 16 to 21 as in-school youth. Out-of-school youth is 16 to 24. We also deal with adults, and we also deal with dislocated workers. Where we place an individual in our program is really like where do they go on the if, and, but, or chart. does this apply? Should that apply? Where do we get this? Does this affect performance? Does this affect, what's the best for the person that's being served? And so with OJT, and we kind of braid the way we approach work-based learning, our most successful method of work-based learning is to take an in-school, out-of-school youth or an adult or dislocated worker, get them a paid work experience, and then move them into an OJT. Why? Because as a paid work experience, they're our employee for 599 hours. They have our workman's comp. The employer only has to provide the timesheets, and they test drive each other. At the end of that 599 hours, if the employer likes them and they want to work there, we roll them into an OJT, and we're allowed to spend another 50 to 75% to 90%, because if they're in an impoverished area and they're a business under 100 employees, we can pay up to 90% of their salary. And so this is big carrots, especially for small businesses. We recently started partnering with a small business development committee, corporation, council, whatever they're called, out of SIUE. And pretty much all businesses that go in now, they're small business, that they're helping them write their business strategy and obtain funding and start out. They refer to us so that we can provide them talent and opportunity for employees. And it's a wonderful relationship, because the business gets as people at that critical period where they're trying to open their business, and they can't spend a lot on training, they can't spend a lot on employees, but we can give them 2 or 3 paid work experiences from the high school to help them stock the shelves, get things open, get things off to the races. The kids get that to put on their resume, and they also get that as a part of the career exploration that they're required as a part of Illinois' new education acts that have rolled out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's correct. They have to go through the WIOA vetting. I call it the torture test, putting them into WIOA, and that's always a difficult thing. So lately, I've been back and forth with Senator Duckworth's policy people about how can we make the new WIOA authorization better, gut all the crap that we have to do to get them eligible. Let us put the people in front of us. And who's going to come in and lie and tell you they're poor just to get into a welding program? I mean, that's what I want to do one day when I win the lottery, is go walk into the WIOA office and go through a welding program. We're wasting time here. We need to get business taken care of. Yes, but it does go back to, you have to vet these people. Once they're eligible, then there's a pathway. So say you had an in-school youth and that person qualified, there's a 5% rule that we can use when we do have individuals that maybe they're over income with the parents, maybe they don't meet a certain barrier. We can put them in our youth program as what's called the 5%. They're only allowed to be 5% of the new enrollees for a calendar year. And so I do have both of those spent out in my program this year already. So that gives us an opportunity. Now I'll give you a story that goes with that. So I have a business services team working with a food truck apprenticeship that we have. And she was interviewing a lady, a young girl, and it was obvious the girl has a differing ability. But yet the guardian does not want this person to know they have a differing ability. So they never did an IEP in school. He won't allow her to be talked to as if he won't cooperate with her as far as us being able to do anything to document that disability. But yet, it's obvious when you talk to her, she has a differing ability. 5% rule is where we put her. We just attested to the fact that she has a obvious differing ability, and we put her in our 5%. So we're able to move forward. But your original question was, there are lots of transitions that occur in this, but there are pathways. So maybe they are not going to go from a paid work experience into an OJT, but maybe they're going into a registered apprenticeship, or maybe they're just going into direct employment, or maybe they're going to post-secondary education. So I talked about we had 2 different youth programs. And both programs, a person needs to take a reading and math assessment. We use CASAS. WIOA allows us to use either CASAS or TABE, the Test for Adult Basic Ed. We do the Illinois Career Information Assessment. One of the things that we have found that if we take the time to assess an individual for their learning profiles, their interest profiler, and their career cluster, we can do a better job of doing the individual education plan with them, or plan for their how they want to pursue a career, because the learning style is really critical. So if you take somebody that's interested in construction and they're a tactile learner, you have two valuable pieces of information in developing a career plan. So all of our folks go through a good bit of career information training on how they deal with the individuals that we service. In our programs, we're also able to do what's called supportive services. So when we put somebody in a paid work experience and on-the-job training, an apprenticeship, we're allowed to give them mileage back and forth for clinicals or to the education entity. We're able to maybe help with child care. Maybe they need certain uniforms for an employer. We're allowed to do these things, which helps increase their likelihood that they're going to continue to be employed, retained, and hired. So we have the paid work experience, which I mentioned is up to 599 hours. They become our employee, and they have our workman's comp. And so this has lately been a real boom for us, because the employers now are coming out of the woodwork because they talk to each other, and they're realizing that, hey, here's a chance for me to test drive somebody to see if they'll fit in my business, and the same thing for the individual. It's win-win no matter what. Even if an individual, sometimes in life it's good to know what you don't want to do as much as it is what you want to do. And so if you have a high school student, you send them over to Barnes Jewish, and they work at that hospital 30 days, and then you send them over to St. Elizabeth's, then you send them over to Gateway, and they've experienced 3 different cultures. It helps them to realize, well, you know, I had it pretty good at Barnes Jewish. They treated me with respect, and, you know, I liked the environment. They seemed like they cared about their employees. So there's a lot that they can glean from these opportunities that goes above and beyond just, here's a job, here's what's expected of you. We pay the entry level for whatever the job is, and if there's not an entry level, because we do have places that'll come to us like, I'm trying to think one. It was one of the community-based organizations, and they wanted somebody to come in and just basically do paperwork and filing, and they're like, well, we don't really have a job. So we helped them write the job description, and then we said, well, I don't think they ought to work any less per hour than somebody would work starting at Walmart. Walmart pays $17 an hour. So we pay them $17 an hour just to file papers and shred papers and tote stuff around. And, you know, in some cases, especially with the high schools, you'll hear individuals talk about they can't bring individuals into the workplace because of the age restriction. That's not true. That's an insurance thing. It's not a law. It's not anything to do. There's certain jobs they can't do as a part of a paid work experience. You can't hand a 17-year-old a chainsaw. But if you wanted them to work with a lawn crew, they could very well rake leaves. So what are they getting out of that, you say? Well, they're around the individual using the chainsaw, so when he says, I'm tightening up the links in the chain, they're learning terminology. They're learning the business culture. They're learning methods of operation. They're learning how to come to work on time. They're learning what's expected from that particular employer in that work environment. But Illinois has a rule, and I think it's Rule 255, that says that and the clear language is, if an individual goes out on a work-based learning opportunity that's sponsored by the school, then the insurance follows them just like they're on a field trip. It's just like they go to the zoo. And so we started explaining that early in about the 3-year process that we built our program, and employers don't even ask us about it anymore. And then again, if they do a paid work experience, they're on our workman's comp also. So the employers really like that, because that's their big hang-up is the insurance, and age. So we always try to do a paid work experience, and unless it's like to the end of the budget year like we are now, June 30th, we have to have our money spent out. So a lot of paid work experiences where we would like to roll them into OJTs, we would just go ahead and put them in OJTs because we need to obligate the money to the end of the year, whereas a paid work experience, it's only as they go. So if I put them in a PWE in May, then there's 4 paychecks they're going to get. I'm reimbursing for those 4 paychecks. Whereas an OJT, I can obligate the whole 6 months now, and it comes out of this year's budget. Ideally, that's the way we want to go. We want to get them paid work experience into an OJT. And in a lot of cases, we want that OJT PWE to be a part of a registered apprenticeship, because if they're in our program, we vetted them and they're eligible for our services, we can pay for the related training instruction. So say they are going to go from graduating out of high school to Mac Medical, which is one of our employers that we do registered apprenticeships with the high schools. We'll pay for the certificate welding program at Southwestern Illinois College, pay for all their associated needs that they need as far as equipment, helmets, smock, gloves, steel-toe boots, and then we'll also pay the OJT as a part of their on-the-job training as a part of the registered apprenticeship. So it helps us really spend our money, and we get a real good return on investment, because we get to capture the high school credential, we get the welding certificate, and then they're employed. So from a programmatic standpoint, it's a lot of aces for us. Okay, so I got to the end kind of in a hurry, because I kind of wanted you guys to kind of get questions on how you develop it, because how you develop paid work experience is a big deal. It comes a lot of going to chamber meetings, chambers of commerce. I go to every coffee cup connection, morning mingle. If they have an after hour, I really like the after hours, because once the alcohol flows, I get 2 or 3 business cards from the same person. I love watching humans. You know, it's funny. Get home, oh yeah, she gave me 3. It's kind of funny. And we do like lunch and learns for the Chamber of Commerce, where we go in and talk about our services, because if you're in WIOA's workforce, you know you're the best kept secret in the game. Nobody knows what you do. They don't, you know, it's great when their eyes pop on. And if you've been doing it long enough, you know they're always waiting for that other shoe to drop, like what the catch is. What's the catch? You can't be giving me all this for free. You can't be helping me develop my employees. You want something from me. It's not like that. I mean, we are what we are. But it's a lot of going to chambers. It's a lot of interactions. It's a lot of doing things that sometimes are beneath you. So like I said, I had 20 people to supervise 6 offices. If a school calls and says, hey, can you come over and do a workshop or come talk about how important it is to interview or maybe help with a resume, even though I'm the director, I make time to go do it, because it increases your credibility. It drives those connections that you need. And it's a symbiotic relationship. So like with my high schools, I know almost all my counselors in the area. I know all superintendents. I know teachers. And that breeds success, because our programs have evolved to where it really takes a village. And once you get the village built, that's a huge big deal. So we started working early on, probably last year, a little before, in getting our career specialists in the same space with a high school counselor, in the same space with the business people. So like we'll have, when we go to do an assessment of a business for a paid work experience, we'll invite school counselors along from that district. Reason being, they can go out and make a connection with the HR person. They know directly who to talk to when that student's doing their programs. They get to see the facilities and how they're run, the environment, the culture, and all that. And it also helps them with the stereotypes. In the presentation I did earlier, I was talking about everybody still thinks manufacturing Scooby-Doo. There's wooden boxes and spider webs everywhere. It's not like that. I mean, you can eat off the floor at some of these facilities. I mean, it's lean, mean, and clean. And so breaking those stereotypes is important. And wherever we get the opportunities, we involve the parents, because mom, you know, if you get mom happy with the decision, you're pretty much home free. So we do a lot of that. I had one of my career counselors the other day come up and said, well, Junior wanted to be a part of the registered food truck apprenticeship. We had the first one in the country, by the way. And he wanted to do that. But mom and dad started talking him out of it. No, we think you ought to do manufacturing. Well, that's really not his passion at all. His passion was he wanted to do this food truck. So I said, okay, well, let me call up John over at Social Kitchen. Let's make an appointment for mom and dad to come over and see what's going on at Social Kitchen. Well, what Social Kitchen does is they do things in the community where we buy $8 tokens and give them to them, and they go into East St. Louis or wherever there's a food desert, and they get a $15 meal of their choice. So like he rolls all 5 food trucks in. They can have tacos, they can have barbecue, whatever they want, but it's dining with dignity. And so his whole program is around helping people with disabilities, veterans, homeless people. We have one of our homeless youth finished up with him. He's in the culinary program at SWIC. I don't know if I said that right. I'm Southern, so I speak 2 languages. Some people call it culinary, some people call it culinary. So anyway, if you understood me, you're doing well. But he's in that program now, and after about 2 more years in the apprenticeship, he'll own his own food truck and his own route. And they'll help him finance it at a low interest rate. So he'll be a business owner. But also as a part of their food truck apprenticeship, they teach him the business skills. 65% of the food trucks fail because of their lack of a business ability to run the program. They teach them that. We're actually working with a social kitchen to develop the first food truck academy. It's going to be in Collinsville next to the Gateway Center. I just finished turning the grant in. And they'll bring people in from all over the country to learn how to do that. He also has a program where he takes buses, dilapidated buses from mass transit. He'll flip those over, redo the inside, and we call them snap wagons. He'll go locally and get fresh produce, and he'll drive those into places like East St. Louis and Cokia. They can bring their SNAP card. There'll be certain times that they are in the community. People can get fresh fruit, vegetables, and things off the trucks. So we like to partner with lots of that kind of, because that's good for everybody. And so say all that to say that it's really all tied to the work-based learning principles in our area and what we want to do and how we want to make an impact in our community. You know, we're all, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talk about the in-school? In-school? All out of school. I think, no. Yeah. So the key is the career specialist that you assign to them. Oh, the question was on out-of-school youth, do we have the problem of them starting a program and quitting a program and starting a program and quitting a program? And the answer to that is no. The career specialists we have, I specifically chose the career specialists that we have to reflect the population they work with. So like they're young, they're social media savvy, they understand that you're going to get a text and not a phone call. So I strategically chose, and we've gotten much better results. They relate to the other person, the younger person, and it just seems to have really improved our outcomes. So like last month we had 17 paid work experiences, 16 are employed. They went on to full employment. And so it really has to do with that piece of it, the connection that they make, right?
We have the same issue too. So like on top of them, like a lot of times they just want to focus on school because the college experience is also kind of like a culture shock for a lot of our students, especially if they're the only ones who've ever been in it. The other issue we come across is like a lot of our students are already in a job. And how do you convince a student to quit a job that's technically permanent versus a job that's temporarily? For us, what we try to do, that's the other issue too, is they get paid more. Some of the things that we have tried to do is just expanding on different types of employers, or even asking our students like, well, what do you want to do? But the other hard part is obviously certain students need certain licensing and certification in order to do the job. So that's something we come across.
Well, this is so strange. Sorry. I was just going to say too that like it's hard for us as well because we have a lot of healthcare students and it's like a 40-hour week for them just with clinicals and with school. So like a lot of our work experiences, we're having trouble finding like weekends or extended hours because those are the hours that they can work, because from like 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, they're at school or at clinicals. So for them, they're like, I don't have time to do that. I'm not available during those times. So it's, yeah, we have plenty of work sites. It's just like our students don't feel that there's enough incentive to do these jobs at this point. I feel like the younger age high schoolers we could probably get, but just with these students, they're like, well, I'm too busy and I already have a permanent job, so why would I leave? So that's just our.
So from an employer's perspective, who have brought youth into our workplace for these internships, and have had them on their phone, not show up, not be ready to work, I think it's important for this to be part of the process. So figuring out those partnerships with the employers, and maybe having the employers instead of having the employers engaged at the back end, just during the work-based learning part, have them come in earlier and develop that relationship, because we have to help them set expectations for the environment and what work is. There's a big disconnect and a belief. And when I work with my operations people, the hard thing is if I put a resume in front of them of a youth, their resume looks like a series of unfortunate events. So they're not going to select them. But when I talk to operations about the fact that, yes, but this is a youth that has now realized they've had a series of unfortunate events, has enrolled in this training by choice, and are looking to change that trajectory, then the operations people start shaking their heads. So I think partnering with those businesses, employers sooner, so that we can help tell that story that if you want to be successful, you need to do this. Whether it's with my company, whether it's in the hospital, don't waste this opportunity to see what success looks like. So I think it's really comes down to employer partnership.
It's also key that the career specialists stay, we're required to stay in contact 30 days. Mine don't. Mine talk to them about every 2 or 3 days. And even with a caseload of 30 to 40 active youth, it's critical because they feel like there's more investment in them from us. And they feel, so our folks have been pretty good at feeling when somebody's mood's changed and then diving. Why you feel like you're down today? And then they unload their personal problem. And then maybe that gets them to work today. So it's been a lot of work, but the investment has been much, the return has been so much higher.
So I would say I work exclusively with youth, so 16 to 24-year-olds. And I think what we've seen is pretty consistent, is that we just have a lot of youth who don't want to work, period. They don't see the value in work, and they're in a position where either their grandparents or their parents, they're living at home and they don't need to work. So that's something we're fighting. But one of the things we did in my program was we started a program that's called KEYS, and it stands for Knowing and Enhancing Your Skills, with the whole premise of we don't want to put youth into our WEX, our WEX relationships and have them be unsuccessful and kind of burn that bridge. So what we do is I work for Goodwill, and Goodwill facilitates our WIOA grant. So we developed this program where they go to our e-commerce department and they learn, how do I show up for work on time? How do I tell my boss, hey, I'm going to be 10 minutes late? How do I work on it as a team? How do I communicate with my boss? With the idea that they're learning some of these workforce skills that they don't have before we send them into a partner relationship that we've established. Because we have had a lot who have kind of burned that relationship, and then the business doesn't want to take them back because it is a high risk. You're working with youth who don't know how to work. They don't know how to show up on time. Most of the time, they're not reliable. So that's helped us a little bit, is to be able to kind of put them in a safe environment where they can make mistakes. We can teach them how to do things differently, with the intent that we could then move them onto a WEX where they would hopefully finish their contract. But we still have at least a fourth, if not more, who don't finish.
I just thought about something that we actually are thinking about implementing. Is we also have job shadowing too. Like, it could be a day, it could be a week, and we can probably potentially even do it with the work sites we sign them off on. And again, it's them actually exploring that work site, and like you said, getting those skills without even harming them actually putting in the WEX and it being unsuccessful. Because the whole goal of the job shadowing is for them to actually see what they would be doing. So that's something that we're trying to do. So thank you for bringing that up because that just reminded me we also have the option of doing job shadowing too. So
Kind of helps that over the few years as a apprenticeship navigator that I was before I took over as the workforce person, is that I already had all these relationships built with businesses, real close working relationships from the CEOs down. And so when my career specialists have somebody that's kind of iffy, I arrange some type of interaction within the business. So I'll call up the CEO and say, can my career specialist bring this person over for the day? And so they can go over and see what that environment's like before we commit to a paid work experience. And so I think the more you do to make it work, the more successful you're going to be. Like our registered apprenticeship program with our school systems and our businesses, you don't just get in it. You have to be referred into it. And then there's a contract that takes place. The parents are at the table. The business is at the table. It's almost like when you sign your signing thing, if they do for football. That's kind of the way it is. We've made it an elitism, and it's not just something you can just walk into. You have to earn it. And so that's paid huge dividends for us because the employers don't say, well, the people you're sending us suck. And they're like, we got some good candidates. And so just kind of the opposite, like our female welders, I mean, they're like raving on our female welders. So it also opens up more opportunities for candidates they wouldn't take before once you establish some credibility with them. Questions or comments?
So we have a question from one of our online attendees, actually going off of what Craig had mentioned as far as the conundrum of students having jobs already. And so their question is, how do we counter, especially with the increase in wages, that some of the ground floor blue-collar jobs now pay workers because entry-level salaries in some industries are not nearly as enticing as they once were?
So I'm kind of at a disadvantage because I don't have anybody in my youth program that had a job when they got into our youth program. So I don't encounter that often because we just don't have them coming in like that. For us, we're looking, and I mean, I have a rich environment to pull from, East St. Louis, Cahokia, where I have a lot of disadvantage opportunity to pull people in that, and we're really looking for those people that haven't had that opportunity. And if you take the clay that's not been in the oven before, you can mold it a little bit more the way you want to mold it. So I haven't had to experience that on a regular basis. But it goes back to human motivation, though. Belonging, wanting, Maslow's hierarchy, security, needs, understanding the person's needs. And so we really try to get a real good picture of the candidate during the screening phase. What is it that this person's really, really looking for? And if they have a job, and you should already, during the intake process, they don't change the stripes after they get vetted in WIOA. If they're going to ghost you a couple of times ahead of time during that screening process, they're going to ghost you at the employer. They're going to ghost. So we cut them loose. I mean, it's a reality that there's a large group of fish out there to be served. So we work hard to find those ones that we think are going to be successful and that we can get a positive result, because at the end of the day, that's our job. Questions or comments? All right. Let me see if I might put my information up here if you ever want to holler. You can always come and spend the day with us if you want. We have quite a few programs going on. We work with the local school systems, Bridges program, their STEP programs. We have a lot of their young people employed. Social Kitchen's about to open up a place on their campground. It's in Swansea. It's called Holy Crepes. It'll all be disability, individuals with differing abilities. And it'll be crepes and desserts and things. He actually designed the physical layout of the restaurant for people with disabilities. He placed places where they can have safe spaces, individuals with differing abilities to interact with the public. He's done his prep places and things to where they could be away from noise, and just really designed it with inclusiveness in mind. So, yeah.
So in June, it's in the Wovia app for in the community section. We posted something for career pathways for target populations. We have a meeting coming up in Collinsville that would be an awesome experience to get an exposure that includes multiple tours of these programs so you can see success stories. The career pathways for target populations, quarterly meetings really focus on raising up best practices across the workforce system. And it usually happens right around when there's a workforce board meeting, and we try to move around the state. So the next one is coming up in June, I think 14th or 15th, whatever the Wednesday is. So join us down there. There's registration link. I guarantee every time I talk to somebody that goes to one of these, we had one out in Kiwani, and people from my local workforce board attended, and it was transformational for them. So if you get that opportunity to see it, touch it, feel it, it's a great opportunity.
Yes, by all means. I think that day we'll be touring Holly's House of Hope. That's a Down syndrome individual that works for the city of Highland. They take down and put up items at the senior center, just a job that we have there. We also have another individual with the Highland Police Department. He washes the cars, takes out the trash. It's a Down syndrome individual. And then we have some registered apprenticeships with the city of Collinsville in groundskeeping, event setup at the Gateway Convention Center. One of the first apprenticeship graduates we had through the STEP program was recently hired by the city of Collinsville full time, and every time I see the video, I start to tear up because it was just awesome. The city folks just love this guy, and so we've just started expanding that apprenticeship. But I can tell you this, from pretty much anything dealing with STEP program or individuals with differing abilities, the mentor is the key. If the mentor's not right, it's going to fail. It has to be a good, strong mentor that understands people with differing abilities and is willing to put in the effort to get the product. We learned that the hard way. So we had some failures at the beginning, but if you haven't failed, you haven't tried. So appreciate your attention. If you need me, you know where to find me. If you want to come visit.
From our online attendees, and it's really focused on sort of that elevator speech, or they refer to it as an FAQ. When you're starting that conversations for the first time with employers, do you have an example of that, or kind of where you can start when you're first reaching out to employers?
And so the elevator speeches are usually on the fly. I don't have one set for any one thing, and it depends on the environment. So if I'm at after hours and I meet the CEO of Offenburg, and he's got 13 dealerships, then I pull Mike to the side and I say, hey, Mike, why aren't you guys using paid work experiences for some of the jobs you have out there? I have students that need experience as a part of their high school requirement, and they're our employee with our insurance. They could come out and stock your shelves. They could come out and do this. They could come out and do that. Or maybe it's an accounting function. They could come out and shadow an accountant. And usually if you get that buy-in right there from the start and they go, oh, yeah, we'd love to help. All right, you're done right there. You're in. Everybody underneath that person's at that point, that becomes their priority. And so when I reach back out to the training manager, we don't want, well, Mike said you would do it. Oh, well, I guess I'm doing it then. And so that's the elevator speech. It's really based on who I'm talking to, where we are, that snapshot in time, and what I think we could do for them. And so it's not usually a long, but I always want to make sure that I cover the insurance part of it in that first elevator speech, because that's the biggest question that stops paid work experiences, job shadows, is that whole age thing with individuals under 18. So I usually shoot that out the boat right off the top, and if you can get that past your CEO, then it'll float downhill. Any other questions online?
Sorry. But like you mentioned that insurance piece, and that under the age of 18, which we also talked about in the previous session. So just kind of, the information to back that up and to share with employers who are saying, no, we absolutely cannot, where to find that, how to share that out and have that conversation with them.
So if you're online, if you'll get that email address right there, which has the funky hyphen in the middle, if you will send me an email and request the information, I have the 255 rule on my desktop, so I will send it to you. I think it was August of 21 when that was passed, but I have it on my desktop so I can shoot it to you.
The other thing is just refer the employer to their insurance broker, their business insurance broker. We had that conversation. My COO was saying, no, we can't, and just like they said in the pre, I don't accept no. And I forced us to go to our broker, and the broker said, absolutely. To the extent that when it was a good experience for the student, we said, can we start training them on equipment, utilizing our saws and our overhead cranes? They said, absolutely, even though they were under the age of 18. As long as they were supervised, they were okay with it.
So I won't even mention that to my youth supervisor. She'd hack me up with that same chainsaw. So she's not going to let them. She goes out and actually tours the site and says, okay, they could do this, they could do this, they can't do that. And she makes them aware right off and writes it into the contract, and she gives them a supervisor's manual. She finds out who's going to be the supervisor, and she sits down with that person and says, this is what's expected of you. I will be coming out to check. So, you know, if I find them in a box with a chainsaw, me and you're going to rumble. And Brenda's ex-Marine, so she gets their attention. So, but it is key. It's all that communication back and forth, what's expected, the parameters, and so forth, that make the difference in the product that you get in the end. Any more questions online? All right, well, if there's no other questions, we'll wind down. I'll give you a few more minutes to take a break because it's kind of been rushed between presentations and things. So take you a break, and if you guys need me, I'll be around. Have a blessed. Thank you for your being here.